Hello, my name is LoG, and today I'm going to show you how I personally approach and practice the fretboard by using some of the material discussed in this short.
Yesterday we talked about dominant seventh leads plus the 4 giving us a smooth suspended sound. Rock players like to use this, but blues players like to do something a little bit different. Standard dominant seventh, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, maybe with 6 as well. But watch this extra note. What am I doing right there? Instead of playing 3, I'm always playing the half step back from 3 into 3 every time. What is this note? This is flat 3. So when you do this, it's almost like you're playing minor just for a moment. You could hammer on into the 3, slide, bending is very popular. And you can do this to any third in any register all the time. Watch this. 1, 2, 3 up top. Instead of playing 3, back a half step first and then bend into it. Come down. So remember, dominant seventh plus flat 3 into normal 3.
If you enjoy this approach and this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below. All right, so the point of today's video is basically using the material that I'm talking about in this short as an example of how I personally navigate the fretboard and teach the fretboard. This method that I'm going to be talking about today is basically the exact same method that I use on my Patreon if you're interested. It's done in a very specific way, but in my opinion, it really does allow you to be more adaptable on the fretboard and kind of adjust depending on your needs, especially depending on your fingering, a little bit better than kind of the normal like 5-position scale method that most people do. So the main sound that's happening inside of this short is really this. The hallmark of this sound is really a root and then flat 3-3, right? It's just that little move that kind of implying minor for just a moment and then going into the third. And then from there, we can kind of do whatever other sound we want. We can play 1 sliding into 3-5. We can play 1 sliding into 3-5 in flat 7, kind of the dominant figure that I'm playing in the short. We can go right to flat 7, all those things. So the main thing I'm going to target here is just that tiny piece of a lick that's just 1 flat 3-3. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick a root on the guitar. I'm going to use this A right here, and I'm going to find all of the ways that I can play this tiny figure. Okay, notice I'm not playing a large lick or a large scale pattern or anything. I'm just playing these 3 notes, 1 flat 3-3. So 1 passing tone into 3. So this is how I would approach it. Here's my root right here. If I know that's my root, I know 3 is going to be located right here, right? Or excuse me, right there on the E string. So just 1, 2, 3. If that's 3, I know flat 3 will be right behind it. So I play 1, flat 3, and 3. With whatever fingering you want, you can slide up to that note. You can use all your fingers, pointer, ring, pinky if you want to stretch, or maybe bend. Whatever you want to do, that is a location for that particular lick, okay? Now, what I do in my own teaching, I would call this exact configuration right shape because of where the notes are oriented. Notice the root of the shape is over here, and the other notes that I'm playing are to the right. So they're over here, that flat 3-3, what I just played, right? This is kind of the orientation of notes if you are playing and your root is around, or excuse me, your pointer finger is on the root, is around that root, because the layout of your fingers would put all of the rest of the notes over here that you would use with the rest of your fingers, while your root is kind of hovering around this root. Okay, well, what happens if I wanted to, for example, play the root or orient the notes around my middle finger on the root? So you'll notice my middle finger is here. That flat 3 and 3 are still located right here, but they're not as easily accessible anymore because I'd have to go like middle pinky and then slide or something like that. Again, not the end of the world. We can do that. The notes are still there. But is there another way we can play this set of notes? Well, I can feasibly reach root and flat 3, but instead of playing flat 3 and then 3, I'm going to play flat 3 and then a different location for the third. Where is there another location? Well, if we're playing A, here's our root, C sharp is the third. There's another C sharp on the guitar, and it's right here on the A string. So this note is the same as this note. As you can tell, they sound exactly the same. So instead of this 1 flat 3-3, I'm going to play 1 flat 3-3, right? Middle finger on my root, flat 3 over here, and then 3 right here. This is the same figure versus this, right? Notice the difference. Not only is my fingering different, but how the notes are laid out are different. With the first shape that I call right shape, all of the notes are on one string, whereas this next shape, 2 notes on one string, 1 on the next, right? 2 notes on the E string, root, flat 3, and then normal 3 on the A string. I call this center shape because the root is kind of centered in the middle of the rest of the notes. We've got some notes over here, we've got some notes over there. And then naturally, you might say, well, there's probably a left shape, and there is. So what happens if I play my root or position my hand around the root on my ring finger or pinky? So now in this position, you can see where my hand is now. These 2 notes over here that I was playing earlier, flat 3, 3, are pretty out of position. Obviously, they're still there. I can still slide to them, no problem. But is there a way I can play these notes now over here? Well, there is. If you remember, I just played 1, flat 3, and then 3 right there. Well, if this is 3, flat 3 is going to be right here, back a fret, just like it was over here. So these notes, I can play 1, flat 3, 3, or I can play 1, flat 3, 3. It's the same exact set of notes, just positioned differently. And look at what this one gives us. This gives us this exact collection of notes, 1, flat 3, 3, our tiny little phrase, oriented to the left of my starting root. Here's my root. The notes are over here to the left, flat 3, 3. And guess what? These 3, I should say, my right shape, what I call center shape, and what I call left shape, that's the only way to play this exact figure, these exact 3 notes off of this root. There is no other way to do it on the entire guitar. I mean, you can get really silly and you can play 1, flat 3, 3, right? Maybe you want to play these 2 notes and then like tap that note or something. That's fine. But within reason, those are the 3 locations. You're either to the right of your root, you're centered around your root, or you're to the left of your root. Now, what we're going to do now, is do this exact move, these 3 configurations of this tiny little phrase off of every A on the guitar. So we just did it on this A. We're going to run every A down the strings. So keep in mind the unique characteristics of each configuration. Right shape, all of the notes are on one string, generally kind of a stretchier shape, and we're moving this way. We had center shape where we had 2 notes here and 1 note there. This one's a little awkward, and you might think, why on earth would I ever play this one? Because the other ones are a lot easier. But you will see there's a reason where this one might come in handy down the road. And then this one right here is nice because it's kind of the less stretchy of all 3 of them. And we have 1 note here, 2 on the next string. One really strong hallmark of this shape, it's the only one where we can hold the 1 and the 3 at the, or I should say hold the 1 and then the flat 3, 3 at the same time. Basically hold the 1 the entire time, giving us like a little chord sound. So just in this early stages, I'm already looking at each configuration and trying to find the unique qualities of each one to give me a reason to play them, right? Otherwise, it's just the same 3 notes over and over again. You want a reason to move through these different configurations. So with that in mind, let's take all 3 of these patterns, 1, flat 3, 3, right, center, and left, and play them on every A on the guitar. So I just played it here on this E string A. Okay, well, what about the A string A? So of course I can just play the open A string. I only have one option though. I can play 1, flat 3, 3, but I can't play the others because I can't go behind the fretboard. So I'm going to go up to the 12th fret, do it right here. You'll notice they look identical. 1, flat 3, 3, obviously smaller because the frets are smaller. That's right shape, center shape, 1, flat 3, 3, right? 2 notes on one string, 1 on the next, right? Left shape, we got 1, flat 3, 3. This is the one we can kind of hold the root the entire time. Kind of cool. Little chord like that. Nice, that's the A string. What about the D string? Here's an A. Guess what? It's going to look exactly the same. 1, flat 3, 3. Center shape, 1, flat 3, 3. 1, flat 3, 3. Looks exactly the same. I could do this up an octave as well. G string, where's an A? Right here. This is where things change because of the tuning of the guitar. You'll notice the right shape looks exactly the same, or a slide or a bend or whatever, because all of those notes are on one string. But when we move to the B string, it is not the same because of the tuning of the guitar. Traditionally, down here, we were doing this, right? 1 and 3, but guess what? It is not 1 and 3 anymore. Right? That's the same note. Those are 2 flat 3s because 3 is now located here. If this is 1, 3 is simply down a string. Whereas on all other strings, it's always down a string, back a fret, 1 and 3. But from the G string to the B string only, it is on the same fret. That's the unique little move that you get when you're dealing with standard tuning, which is kind of cool because the center shape figure that I was playing earlier, this one flat 3-3, it's awkward. It's a bit of a stretch down here, but watch what happens when I play it on the G string. It's actually pretty comfortable because I can just do pointer, pinky, and then pointer on the same fret. Right? Kind of easy, especially in comparison to the other ones. So even though the tuning can sometimes be a pain to think about, sometimes it'll make certain licks that are uncomfortable in other places really comfortable when you start dealing with that G string to B string little bridge crossing. And then finally, the left shape, we, of course, going to look different again. Instead of this one, like this, 1 flat 3-3, it will be 1 flat 3-3, which is kind of nice, less fingers that you need to use to play that one. Okay, so that's the G string, and then finally the B string up here, it's going to look exactly the same as the others. We don't have to worry about the tuning issue. So 1 flat 3-3, right? Center shape, 1 flat 3-3, 1 flat 3-3. So notice that process. It might look like kind of a waste of time to do that, but what you're doing is you're basically just outlining the guitar, looking for all these different options, looking for different ways to navigate, ways to locate these notes. And then over time, as you add notes, like we're about to do here in a moment, you'll start to notice the same notes just in different locations, and you'll be able to grab them in different ways that will yield different sounds, different licks, different shapes that will feel different. Maybe some of them are going to be really awkward. Some of them will be a lot more comfortable. That's why this is so valuable. Looking at these tiny little figures, looking at all the different ways to play them around the fretboard. So with that in mind, let's start adding some notes. So I'm only playing 1 flat 3-3, just this figure. Let's add in 5. That's kind of the next natural note that you would add. Okay, well, let's do that right here off of that original A that we started with, what I would call right shape. 1 flat 3-3. Of course, 5 is right here. I can like tap it, I guess. Oh, excuse me. Let me get it right. You could do that, but let me find another 5 in the area. It would be right here. Okay, how do I know? Because if you think about your normal major scale off of any position, this would be a 1 and a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can also think about a power chord is always 1 and 5, or you can just know the actual letters. This is A and E. E is always A's 5, A, B, C sharp, D, E, like that. Okay, so we've got 1, flat 3, 3, and then 5. Let's add this note into the mix in all of our different fingerings and see what we get. So our first one, kind of nice, little slide we can do even like that. 1 pointer finger ring, slide up to 3, and then 5. Very classic figure. Let's throw this one into our kind of awkward center shape one. Actually, kind of not too bad. Going for some more kind of wacky ways to play it. That one might be kind of cool. Do a lot of hammer-ons and stuff. 1 flat 3-3, 5. Okay, let's do our left shape. So 1 flat 3-3. We can simply slide up and grab that same 5. 1 flat 3-3, 5. That's kind of comfortable. Get them to play, right? But we can also do this in a different location because we don't have to play 5 right here. 5 is also located right here. It's the same note, right? E and E. So what can we do now? Left shape looks like this. 1 flat 3-3, 5. This one's nice because it's the only one where we can hold all of those main chord tones, 1, 3, 5, together like a chord. It's the only one. This one will make a lot of sense, especially when we move it to different octaves. So now that we're adding in this new note, what's the next step? Do it off of every single A. I just did it off of this A. Let's just run through the strings. A string right here. Same exact thing. 1 flat 3-3, 5. Looks exactly the same as this, right? Our little center shape one. 1 flat 3-3, 5. Still awkward, but still could be kind of cool for something. We've got our 1 flat 3-3 little slide up. So this is like a little combination shape. We know the 5 is right there. I can simply play 1 flat 3-3 slide like that, or hammer on. And then we can play the bona fide left shape, 1 flat 3-3, 5, which allows us to hold 1, 3, and 5 at the same time. Something that's kind of unique to this position. That's the A string. Let's move to the D string. Things are mostly going to look the same, except for one spot. 1 flat 3-3, 5 looks exactly the same as this, exactly the same as that, right? Back to our A, kind of the awkward one. 1 flat 3-3, 5. Get some of those quirky sounding licks. 1 flat 3-3, 5, little slide up, hammer onto the 5. And then we have this one. Remember what it looked like down here, left shape. 1 flat 3-3, 5. See this distance, 1 and 5? This is not the same on the D string because now we are traveling to the B string, getting in front of that tuning issue. So 5 is not here. As you can tell, that is flat 5. It is here. So this is basically the lick from the short. 1 flat 3-3, 5. This is super, super common because it's so comfortable. It yields this little staircase chord. 1 flat 3-3, 5. Very, very comfortable. So that's the D string. G string, again, it's going to look different because of the tuning. Let's figure it out. 1, flat 3, 3. So far, we've always played 5 right here, but guess what? That's not 5. 5 is right there because of the tuning. Everything you do on this B string has to be shifted up a fret. 1, flat 3, 3, 5. Now, probably an easier way to do that is just slide up with the ring finger. Super common figure. Okay. What about the awkward one that we've been doing, that center shape? 1, flat 3, 3, 5. Definitely strange. Guess what? Right here, it's actually really comfortable. 1, flat 3, 3, 5. It's really comfortable to play right there. So even though you might write this one off as like, oh, when would I ever use that? It's so awkward. Well, right here, it's actually really easy. So that's why you don't want to write off fingerings that are uncomfortable, because sometimes they will be comfortable. You want that option available. And then finally right here, 1, flat 3, 3, slide up to 5, little hammer on. Or we can do our actual left shape, which would include the open high E string in this position. Basically yields a chord. I'll do it up an octave so you can see a little better. 1, flat 3, 3, 5 yields this little A chord. 1, 3, 5 right there. And then our B string shape, can't really do the left shape because we run out of strings, but it would look like this. 1, flat 3, 3, 5. Our little right shape, right? Then we've got the awkward one, center. Back to being awkward right there. Our little slide, right? And then we can't do the other one, because we don't have that note up top. But you see the process right here. Does it take time? Yes, but you're basically mapping out the entire fretboard with this tiny little figure. And once you get comfortable, you're starting to look for all these note locations, then you can basically just start experimenting. You can say, okay, so far I've been doing 1, flat 3, 3, 5. Maybe I want to do 1, flat 3, 3, 1, right? That little slide, and grab the 1 up the octave. I can find that. I can see that higher octave. I'll do that. And then maybe I'm on my pointer finger right here. Maybe I'll just do it again up an octave. I know what it's going to look like. It'll look like this. 1, flat 3, 3, jump up to the high A. Now I've got a 2 octave run of that shape just by combining 2 configurations. Both of these are right shape, as I would call it, because you're always moving to the right. You can even, if you want to, continue if your finger's proper. That takes me all the way to the top. You just have to make sure your fingering is landing properly. Adding a little 5 right there too. So notice the orientation of that exact run. It's always moving this way because I'm playing right shape and a right shape and a right shape. You're kind of constantly doing this, but you don't have to do that. You can do this. I can play 1, flat 3, 3 to 1 right here, flat 3, 3, and grab a 1 up the octave. Right? That's another figure that might be kind of cool. Or maybe I like this shape and I want to find a more comfortable figure to get into that. I can do this. 1, flat 3, 3, 5, 1, flat 3, 3, 5. Notice what I'm doing there. I'm playing a little bit of this shape, right? And then grabbing this root and continuing. Or I can do straight up left shape right here. 1, flat 3, 3, 5 to the left. Slide up to that next A. Do the exact same thing again. Holding it like a chord. Super easy to do because I'm thinking about these in tiny chunks and I'm basically just puzzle piecing them together until I get figures that are really comfortable, figures that I like, etc. So that's really how I'm thinking about the fretboard when I'm navigating with a particular sound. And this is a very particular sound, just 1, flat 3, 3. You know, I'm not really doing anything else. I'm mostly just playing those notes and throwing in some extra little sounds. So just briefly, let's expand out of that a little bit and kind of get into the sound we were doing in the video, which would be dominant. So what is that? Basically just adding in flat 7. So I would do that exact same process. Every location, find flat 7, play it, see what happens. So I'm going to start right here, just off of this root. Same thing. 1, flat 3, 3, 5. If that's 5, I know flat 7 is always up 3 frets, as it always is. So I can play a little slide in a flat 7. That's nice. Let me try this one. That one's actually a little bit more comfortable for certain things. 1, flat 3, 3, 5, flat 7. That's a little combination shape. Let me play the awkward one. I mean, honestly, it's starting to actually kind of get comfortable depending on the notes I want. Like that flat 7 feels kind of comfortable to play. Maybe I can go up to 1 and kind of slide up to 1, then do it again. Let's try that. Right? Kind of awkward, but it's yielding a very different sound than this one. That's kind of the classic, the quick little hammer-on. By not doing a hammer-on and actually picking both notes, you're really bringing them out, and it sounds a little bit more, I don't know, different, I guess, a little bit more fancy, I suppose. Right? Again, you can also get wild and do stuff like that. Hold 1, flat 3, and 3 at the same time, right? This particular shape, this center shape as I call it, is the only configuration where that's possible. So again, experimenting gives you different ideas depending on what you're looking for. I'll try that one again. right? And then I'm at the top, maybe because of the fingering I happen to land on, I'm on middle finger, maybe I can do a little slide. There's our little flat 3-3 slide, right? Do that at the end because my fingering calls for that. I'm not forcing myself to land on any particular shape. I'm just abiding by whatever fingering I happen to land on. So that's just me experimenting, adding in flat 7. Let's do flat 7 right here. I didn't do this one. 1, flat 3, 3, 5, flat 7. This one is unique because it's the only one, where I can play these 3 at the same time. Like a chord, flat 3, normal 3, 5, flat 7. Maybe I'll just slide up, do it again. That's kind of nice, right? That's kind of nice. Maybe a little hammer on to 1, do something else. So again, looking for different options, adding little notes gives me new things to do, and you can experiment all you want. So then let's try to just come up with one little lick that maybe uses the awkward one in a way that I wouldn't naturally do, but I'm going to force myself to do it. So let's just try it maybe like right here. So we've got this root up top. I'm going to do my hammer on to flat 3. I know I could, of course, just do that, but I know this note is also here, and I want to use this awkward one. So also notice what I did. I knew this was 1. That's my root. I know I'm also wanting to play flat 7. Where's flat 7? I know it's here, but I know this is also down a whole step, so I can grab that note whenever I want, right? And I also know this. If this is flat 7, which I know, 5 is here, and I can come down here. What is that shape? That will be left shape. So this whole run, if I start down here, left shape, 1, flat 3, 3, 5, flat 7. Check it out. 1, flat 3, 3, 5, flat 7. I'll try to grab that. It's kind of awkward. So I'm combining shapes. I'm combining the left shape right here. The moment I get to this high octave, I'm using the awkward one in this situation. That would be center shape. And that's yielding this kind of interesting lick. Is it easy to play? Not really, but it is kind of cool. And maybe I can work it into something that might sound cool. I'm going to try the whole thing. And then again, I can reach up here. What did I do? I'm playing this really big stretch of 3, 5, flat 7. I know this is flat 3 because that's the shape I've been doing. 1, flat 3, 3. But at any moment, what can I do? If this is flat 3, I can go like this. That's now playing in that other shape. I'm thinking about the note locations, and I have access to these notes, and I can modify whenever I want. And I can play a little flat 3, 3, 5, and if that's 5, that's 1, and I can just sneak that note in. So let's try that whole lick. It's not easy, but... Okay, I added one more note in there. That was a little 2 right there. 2, flat 3, 3, 5, and then 1. So again, I could keep adding notes. We can keep getting complex. It's not really the point of this video. It's really just showing you that the importance of looking at small figures like this and trying to come up with as many different fingerings as possible. And the way that I do it is basically this. You look at a root, you figure out how do I play these notes to the right of my root, meaning my pointer finger will be oriented around the root and the rest of the notes will be this way. How do I figure out this exact same phrase when my middle finger is on the root and the notes are kind of centered, some notes over here, some notes over there? And then how do I figure out the same exact idea or small figure if my ring finger or pinky is on the root, right? That will usually put my notes this way to the left. And now obviously you can do combinations. You can start here and then end here. That's the end goal. But having all of these different orientations is how you develop an ability to adapt, right? That's always the most important thing for me, is being able to play something and then land in a spot where maybe I'm not used to the fingering that I happen to land on, but I can say, oh, look, I'm on my ring finger. That means I have access to the notes over here. But then if I'm playing and I land on my pointer finger, instead of thinking, oh, crap, I don't know what to do, I can say, well, of course I know what to do because I know those same notes over here because I practice these different orientations. That's my root. I know the notes over here. That's my root. I know the notes over here to the left or centered, however you want to do it. You want access to these notes everywhere because then that turns the guitar into this like spider web of note locations that you can just pick and choose. And by doing it with small shapes like this is more of like, instead of just forcing yourself into one big scale that just fits right here and you run it up and down, which is fine, looking at it in these small pieces allows you to combine them in interesting ways that aren't always locking you in one position. It's almost like, you know, you're building Legos or something. You have all these tiny little Lego pieces and you can combine them in a variety of ways, as opposed to getting a Lego set and you have like only 4 pre-made massive things. You can't really do anything with large shapes, but if they're tiny little pieces, you can mix and match them and modify them in whatever way you want. And in my opinion, that is the best way to approach this. So one more thing before I finish this video, and this is super important, and I'll probably talk at length about it down the road, but it kind of applied to what I did today. You'll notice not once did I ever mention a scale that I was playing. I never said I'm playing major pentatonic or I'm playing mixolydian or anything. I only mentioned the letter names that I was playing, or more importantly, the function of those notes, meaning I'm playing the root, I'm playing the flat 3, the 5, the flat 7, or whatever. That's how those notes are functioning over the chord or the implied sound behind us, okay? This is super important because you have to realize that scales and playing scales do not make you sound good. They do not give you control over what you're doing. Why is that? What do I mean by that? When you listen to music, the sounds that you're hearing are not scales. They are notes that are interacting with other notes, like a chord or an implied chord or whatever. It's how the notes are functioning together is what makes the sound what it is. And if you're not thinking about those individual ingredients, meaning the notes and how they're functioning, you're not really in control of your playing. If you're just simply saying, here's a chord, I've been taught that I play this scale over this chord, sure, that's going to work, but you don't have control over the sound, because if you're just playing the scale and letting the scale kind of play the music for you, you're implying that every note of the scale sounds the same, right? Which they definitely don't. Like a root does not sound like a third. It doesn't sound like a flat 7. It doesn't sound like a 5. Doesn't sound like a 2. They all sound different. And if you're just playing them mindlessly and not paying attention to the unique colors inside of those scales, you're not really going to have control of your playing. That being said, you should definitely play and practice scales. That's not the problem. The problem is thinking about them when you are playing. Scales and patterns and whatnot, they're more for your fingers and for your hands. They're not for your brain or for your ears. While you're playing these figures, your brain and your ears need to be thinking about individual notes. You need to be thinking, I'm going to play this figure that's got flat 7 in it, or I'm going to play this figure that ends on 2, or I'm going to do this big bend that ends on the root or whatever. Because if you're thinking about that, you're tying those tiny ingredients to the sounds that they create, giving you control over what you're doing. If you're just playing something and hoping that it sounds good because it's just in the scale, that doesn't mean you have control over what you're doing. That means you are using the correct template of things to use, but you're not in control of those tiny, tiny little ingredients, right? It's like if you're cooking a meal or something and you have a bunch of spices in your cabinet, and you just use all of them randomly just because they're there. You open up your cabinet and you go, oh, look at these spices. I'll just use them however I want. It might taste really good. It also might taste terrible. The point is not whether it's good or bad, it's you don't have control over it. But if you open your cabinet and you say, oh, I know exactly what this spice is going to do. I'm going to use a little bit of this. I'm not even going to use that one at all. I'm going to use a little bit more of this one because you know those individual ingredients. That's exactly how notes are in music. If you see a chord and you know the corresponding scale, even though the scale works, the individual notes inside that scale do not work the same as the other notes. You need to learn what those ingredients are, where they're located, and what they do to the sound, and whether you like them or not, how you can use them for your own playing. So there's one type of person that's going to maybe fight back against this. They're going to say, hey, I don't need to think about all of that stuff because I can already just play scales. Like I can play minor pentatonic and I sound great all the time. I don't need to worry about all that. It's way too much thinking. I don't want to have to think about what I'm doing. I just want to play and feel the music. And I will say that is very true. There's a lot of situations where you can more or less autopilot a pentatonic or a minor pentatonic scale, and you're going to be fine. I mean, people have made multi-million-dollar careers off of doing exactly that. The problem is the types of chord progressions and the types of music where you can effectively do that does not account for every possibility in music. You're going to be able to play this nice kind of tightly knit progressions and styles of music where all of this other stuff out there is going to be impossible for you to play because autopiloting minor pentatonic does not work all of the time. There are certain progressions where it does work for sure, but there are others where it will not. And if you only do that, if you just get into this habit of mindlessly playing scales, you're basically telling yourself, I'm cool with playing this tiny subset of things and all of this other stuff out there I'm never going to be able to touch, because that is exactly what's going to happen. You're going to have the ability to play over things that you can autopilot over, and you're not going to be able to touch anything else that requires more finesse, that requires more control over what you're doing. And I've mentioned this in a different short, and it applies right now. If you're autopiloting like minor pentatonic over a chord progression, and you think, man, I sound really good, you need to actually think this. It's not you that sounds good. This is rude, but it's not you that sounds good. It's the chord progression that is allowing you to sound good, because other chord progressions won't allow you to do that. You're going to do it and you're going to realize, oh, I don't sound good, because the progression is going to be shifting in a way that you need to follow it, and you cannot just autopilot the same scale all the time. So always remember that. Just because you can autopilot minor pentatonic does not mean that you're good. It means that you're playing in a template that's basically got training wheels on. You don't have to do anything. You can just sit there, mindlessly go through, and it works, but that is not all progressions or all styles of music. So hopefully all this stuff makes sense. See you in the next one.